Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Working in manufacturing, it can seem repetitive, right? Because we're doing repeatable processes in our work every day. And when I was working in manufacturing, a lot of us, we want to progress our career, right? We're there, we want to contribute, and we enjoy the field of manufacturing. I wanted to get promoted. And so how was I going to stand out? So I started to just model some behaviors of other people that I saw. Problem was, sometimes that wasn't being very mindful. And sometimes that just caused, to bring out some characteristics of myself that wasn't really me. It wasn't my differentiator. And I didn't really stand out. And I probably broke some relationships along the way because I started to act outside of my own values. And I was able to find my way again. And I think that there's a lot of us that, just kind of struggle on that. And we look at what does success look like and we follow it. But there's success and there's uniqueness in all of us. And we've got our own big, sexy ideas. I have a friend, Mark Levy. He is our guest today. He's the founder of Levy Innovation. He's a positioning and strategy firm. He helps organizations and leaders like us differentiate by using what he calls his big, sexy idea. The ideas that Mark and his clients have are, they're known worldwide by hundreds and millions of people. He's worked with incredible organizations. Mark worked directly with Simon and it helped him. We've talked about him on the show and there's lots of his book reports on the website. And I also have and read his book multiple times, Accidental Genius, which really helped me go through and help me write different and think differently about my styles. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you so much, Trevor. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
So this is like a little bit of a coaching session for me, a little coaching session for our listeners. And manufacturing, you've helped many manufacturers. What do you see in leaders when you walk into an organization and you see people trying to stand out in their organization and
Sure. Well, I have worked with a lot of manufacturers, both on creating differentiation in their organization as a whole, their sales and marketing, getting people excited about who they are and making them stand out in the marketplace. But I also have worked with manufacturing leaders on their leadership inside the organization. Because the thing is that when you're a leader, it's very important that the ideas that your values, your mission, all these different kind of things that you're trying to bring to the organization, it's important that you're able to talk clearly and engagingly about what the organization is about and about who you are. It's important that you make the organization into evangelists for certain ideas. And I find that very few leaders do that. They may not know that they should be doing that, or they don't know how to do it. So put differently, you should be able to talk about your work and what you're trying to accomplish in the world in ways that inspire people and that they can remember and they can repeat and that drives new ways of being from those ways. So that's what I work with them on.
A lot of times we'll hear like safety, right? Like wanting to create that culture of safety and that becomes part of our behavior and becomes who we are. And, we care about the people. So then you're kind of modeling that company's goal and that mission. And then sometimes we get disconnected as we go through the organization, how everybody kind of follows that. So how do you help the companies with that idea? How do you really get that to transcend to the organization?
Well, so amplifying the idea of safety in an organization, that it's important that people understand all the ways safety appears in the world, and that leaders be able to talk about the data about safety, the facts about safety, and the stories about safety. So it's if you're talking about safety, one of the most important things that is about stories about what safety looks like and why safety is needed in the world, because you need to humanize things for people. The problem is that leaders will often talk about ideas, but those ideas, they don't give people any facts, figures, or stories to bolster those ideas. So those ideas just remain kind of abstract. So I'll give you an example. So years ago, I was working with an industrial architect firm in New Jersey. And so what they would do is they didn't build houses. They built like office buildings and office parks for like Merck and Ciba-Geigy and other manufacturers. And so I asked the president or the founder of the industrial architect firm, he was an industrial architect. I asked him, I said, what is the reason why people don't like to hire industrial architects? And he said, oh, that's very easy. I know exactly why. It's that companies look at industrial architects as unreliable business people, that we're just unreliable, that once we have the gig, we won't return their phone call, we won't return their email, that we'll go over budget, we'll go over time. It's just going to be a disaster. So I said to him, are you unreliable? He said, no, we're very reliable. So I said, great. And now this is the thing for your listeners, for them to understand. I said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. I want you to gather every fact, figure, and story that shows that you are reliable. If you gather facts, figures, and stories that have nothing to do with reliability, that's cool. But I'm going to make a script out of everything to amplify the fact that you're reliable. And this is what the script ended up being. It was, we're the reliable industrial architect firm. We've been in business for almost 20 years. In 20 years, we've done almost 4,000 projects. We have 214 repeat clients, including the first client who ever hired us when we opened our doors 20 years ago, the Lakewood School District. They're still our client today. On average, our repeat clients hire us for 16 projects. On the commercial side, we work with companies like Merck, Bayer, Paul Miller, Bentley, Rolls-Royce. On the institutional side, we work with companies like the Mendham Fire Department and the Wharton Police Department. We have 24 people work here. They've been in the industry on average for 16 years. They've been with us on average 7.5 years. As a matter of fact, last year, we were named by New Jersey Business Monthly magazine as one of the top 10 places to work in New Jersey. We have these LEED certificates and these certifications. And then I said to him, that's great. I love this. And now what about stories? Let's gather the stories. I said, do you have any stories that show you're reliable? He said, I'll tell you one that just happened. He said, there was a guy who wasn't even our client at the time. He was a prospect. And I gave him my cell phone number. And he called me on a Sunday night. It was raining hard out and he was almost in tears. I asked him, what's wrong? He said, you won't believe this. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm selling my office building at 9 a.m. and I'm using the proceeds from that and rolling it over. And in the afternoon, I'm buying a bigger, better office building in a better part of town. But I'm looking through my closing papers right now, and I see that I'm supposed to know the physical dimensions of my building, that they're supposed to be written into the closing papers, the building that I'm selling. And I don't know what those dimensions are. I didn't know I needed it. And it might just sound like a technicality, but I'm terrified that I'm going to go to the closing table and they're going to say, you don't have this. We're going to have to delay the closing. And then I won't have money to buy the building in the afternoon. And I know there are other people who are looking to buy that building and I might lose the thing that I really, really need. So I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
So the industrial architect said, don't worry about it. Grab an umbrella. It's raining out. I'll meet you at your building in an hour. It'll be like 11:30 or midnight. And so they met there and they went to the roof of his building, the building he was going to sell. And the industrial architect had brought a laser measuring device with him and measured the height within the building. And he hand wrote the dimensions into the closing papers. And the guy became his customer. So I said, great. So I want more stories like that, along with the facts and figures that we've talked about. And I want every single person in the organization to memorize this script and memorize every fact, figure, and story. And I call it a differentiation brag sheet. Or you could call it a leadership brag sheet if you wanted. And what it is I want everyone from the drafts people to the architects to the person answering the phone to the people pitching to the principals, everyone. I want everyone to know these facts, figures, and stories. So if someone asks them, like they're out getting a drink at the bar on Friday night, and it's like, oh, we were looking for an architect or so. Do you guys know what you're doing? It's like, well, we've done almost 4,000 projects and work with places like Merck and Bayer and Paul Miller, Bentley, Rolls Royce. And it's like, oh, is that a good place to work? Well, I mean, we were in New Jersey Business Monthly magazine is one of the 10 best places to work. People have been average 7.5 years. So in other words, you're backing up your claim that you're reliable in that instance. Whatever you're doing in the world of manufacturing, whatever you as a leader are trying to claim, it's safety or whatever it is you're doing, you need to collect all the facts, figures, stories, and insights that show it. And everyone needs to know all these things. So they don't have to say this whole list, but they can pick and choose. It's like Lego blocks, you just pick and choose. And based on the situation, you actually have something that would be persuasive and memorable to the other people. Does that make sense? So you've prepared to be memorable.
Yeah. And because in manufacturing work, a lot of times we're just focused on the next hour. Right. We have this memory lapse. And what we remember is the bad parts.
Right.
So like we'll be good at maybe doing a product launch, and then we'll do a lessons learned. But usually those lessons learned are on what went wrong.
Right.
And I think this can be a differentiator for us because when I do a lot of our workshops, we'll start off, if it's a continuing workshop, and we'll say, what went well last month?
Right.
What are the success stories of the last 4 weeks since we saw each other? And so this is with a group of maintenance leaders, and they're used to talking about when the machines broke down, because people aren't talking about when the machines keep running. Why did the machines keep running? Why have we not had breakdowns? Like that can be like, hey, we are a reliable manufacturing company. Because I don't think I've ever been through the exercise after 25 years of working in manufacturing of going through of like, what makes us different? What are our stories?
Right. Well, it's important as you're putting it, Trevor, in manufacturing. Often it's this story of things that are working in the background. So how do you take what's in the background and bring it to the foreground? I'll tell you another story about this, but the story that I wanted to tell, one of my favorite stories about this, is actually part of I have a TEDx talk that's coming out in a few weeks. It's not quite out yet, but this is essentially the main part of my TEDx story. I'll give you a taste of this story. This is for everyone listening to this. I like to tell the story. There are plenty of modern stories to tell about what I'm going to tell, but I love this story so much. This is a story that's about 120 years old. The reason why I'm telling you this story, this story, I use predominantly drawing marketing lessons from it, but it's also a way for organizations to show people exactly what it is they're doing to make sure that good things happen in a daily basis. So here's the story, and I'll tell you how to use it. So about 120 odd years ago, early 20th century, there was a famous advertising man named Claude Hopkins. And Claude Hopkins got a call from the head of the Schlitz Brewery. And the head of the Schlitz Brewery said, Mr. Hopkins, there are 5 big breweries in the United States. And on that list of 5 big breweries, we are number 5. We're in last place. We need your help. Claude Hopkins, famous advertising man, said, I'm positive I can help you. But in order to help you, I'm going to have to take a tour of your brewery. The head of Schlitz said, Mr. Hopkins, if that's a condition of working with you, it's a very easy one to grant. You're in Michigan. We're in Milwaukee. Just hop on a train and we're happy to give you a tour. And Hopkins did just that. And what he saw at the Schlitz Brewery astonished him. The first thing they showed him on the tour was an artesian well 4,000 feet deep. The reason why Schlitz went that deep, they said, was that they wanted to make the purest beer on earth. And they thought that the purest water on earth was that deep, that if they stayed too close to the surface, there'd be too many impurities. By the way, artesian well means that that pure water was shooting out of the earth like a geyser, a tremendous force. And Hopkins was very impressed. And then they showed him next on the tour a machine that cleaned every bottle 4 times before they pour the Schlitz beer into it. Again, if the water was pure and the beer was pure, they didn't want to introduce impurities in the bottling process. So 4 times separately, they would clean each bottle. And then they showed him in a laboratory what they called the original mother yeast cell. It was the original cell. It had taken Schlitz Brewer's 1,200 experiments to create. This cell essentially was the great-great-grandmother of every bottle of Schlitz beer ever made all time. So every bottle of Schlitz that ever had been made or ever tasted like or was influenced by this original mother yeast cell, and every bottle of Schlitz beer that ever would be made tasted like or would be influenced by this original mother yeast cell. And Hopkins was standing just a few feet away from this, and he was freaking out. Oh my God, this place is a wonderland. Why aren't you telling absolutely everyone about all these wonders? The head of Schlitz said, Mr. Hopkins, I told you wouldn't understand. You don't understand. This place, not a wonderland. These things, not wonders. This is how you brew beer. This is how every one of our competitors brews beer. We all do the identical thing. We're exactly alike. We're the same. So what we do here at Schlitz, nothing special at all. What we do here is very, very ordinary. Claude Hopkins, the famous advertising man, said, well, that very well may be, but the public doesn't know about all of this. So Hopkins proceeded to write a series of advertisements detailing every single thing he saw, detailing the 4,000-foot artesian well, the machine that cleaned the bottle 4 times, the laboratory, the brewers, the 1,200 experiments, the original mother yeast cell, and more, put to these ads. And in under a year, Schlitz went from being in last place to being neck and neck, at least is how Hopkins wrote about it, neck and neck for number 1. So to me, the lesson from that story is, what is ordinary to you may be extraordinary to the world, or to your vertical, minimally, if they only knew about it. See, you think things don't matter, when to other people they matter a whole lot. So what that story is, so again,
The TikTok should be out by the time this podcast.
By this time it comes out, right. So the idea behind that story, it sounds just like a sales story or a marketing story, but it's really about the things that are painfully obvious to you are not so obvious to other people. And so if you don't try for home runs, if you just talk about how you do the work you do in a way that's painfully honest, you talk about it in that way, that even itself, that's going to be persuasive. That's going to be persuasive. And even from a leadership standpoint, as a leader of a manufacturing firm, I promise you that not all your employees understand everything about the organization. So that if you were to take the time and craft stories about how you do the work you do, that not only would your prospects and your customers want to hear it, but your employees too. And give them a sense of tremendous satisfaction to understand how things were happening and why they were happening, right? What's your 4,000-foot artesian well? You have those things there, and you might not be thinking about talking about it because you'd say, well, other manufacturers have 1,000-foot artesian well too. As a matter of fact, this other place is a 5,000-foot artesian well. It's like, yeah, right. but people don't.
What you got me thinking of, Mark, is, I kind of open it up thinking, I'm trying to make myself stand out as a manufacturing leader, but I was looking like forward, and I was like, I need to do this. I need to, get these results. But if I look back, it's like I could have spent more time just talking to our team of like, hey, we had a good day yesterday. What went well?
Right.
What went well here? And then really kind of leaning into that, more of that identity and leaning into that, because having a great kickoff meeting in the morning and maybe just sharing something personal with your team. And maybe that seems routine to you, but that doesn't happen everywhere. And there's some organizations where you just go to your machine, you start working. So like a story can be like, hey, we get together in the morning,
Right.
like just the simplicities of like what we do well here. Hey, if someone raises their hand and they think that there's a safety concern, we rally around that, right? Like we don't have to fill out paperwork in this place. If you think it's a safety concern, you don't have to call a safety rep. And I'm just thinking of different ways that the listener right now driving to work and say, hey, you know what? Let's spend 15 minutes today of like walking through our place like it's the first time. Or when we get visitors in, there's something that would happen. They would say, oh, well, you do this really well, right? Like, I like how you're tracking this here, or that's interesting. You have these get-togethers with your team and you get these ideas. And it's like, man, if we could just script that all together, you could be, doing something miraculous that you don't see it because we're in it every day.
That's exactly right. You remind me, I used to be the head of sales of a very, very large book wholesaler, book distributor. So we'd buy millions of dollars worth of books from Random House, Simon & Schuster, Doubleday, and the major publishing houses. And then we'd sell them to independent bookstores and Barnes and Noble buying offices and things like that. And I remember on occasion, I didn't do this every day because it was not needed every day. But on occasion, there would be a news story, like a big news story, and suddenly a book that had just been sitting there selling like a copy a week. I would know coming in that day that we were going to sell 10,000 copies of that book when it had just been selling like a copy or two here and there because of a news story, and the book was linked to the news story somehow.
Okay.
And so what I would do is at the start of the day, not only would I talk to my sales staff about the importance of that book, but I would at times call the warehouse together, draw the people together, the people who were taking the books off the shelves and putting them in boxes and whatnot. And I would want them to know, look, this is what happened in the world today. And so this book here's how this book relates to that thing. We're going to be selling a lot of this today. So I just want you to know, if you see a lot of this book selling, this is why. They should kind of know what their role is in making something important happen.
Yeah.
Here's what the thing is, and here's what your role is in making it big. And I didn't have to do it. It would have happened without them knowing that, but I just kind of felt I would want to know that if I was working in a warehouse picking books and sticking them in a box. Like, why is this particular book? It's not sold at all. I was ready to return it to the publisher, and now everyone's ordering 75 copies of it. Why is that? But it's the same thing with your employees. It's the same. You talked about beginning with what we're doing right, leadership meetings. One common way when I'm working with leaders, I often tell them to begin their meetings with proud moments. I say, begin each meeting, just go around the table. Everyone gets about 30 seconds to say a moment in the past week or two that has made them proud. And then they can go into their problem solving. But to me, one of the reasons why that's so important to do that is it gets the leaders looking for proud moments. So we find what we're looking for. So rather than just looking at what's wrong that's happening, they're looking for people's top work and the moments that make them proud. But not only that, I also discovered, I was told this, that because they wanted to spread word about these proud moments to other leaders, if they saw something that was almost about to happen, they would spend extra time or resources to make it happen, to push it over the goal line so they could claim it at the next meeting because they wanted to brag. They wanted to be proud. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, in other words, they accelerated production, like, so they had cool stuff to talk to people about. And so that's the benefit of looking from a proud moment or a strength standpoint or what's working standpoint. It doesn't mean you ignore what's not working. It's just that we go to what's not working naturally, that we need a little help or a little reminder at looking at what is working.
That is just a game changer, Mark. Like, that's, you just got my mind spinning, because it sounds obvious. It sounds simple. We don't really do a lot of that. And if we want to take our engagement rate as an industry and shift it, I mean, what a great way to start. If every manufacturing plant started with, like, what are we most proud of today? Right? We don't go looking for what we're proud for, and you find what you're looking for. So if you want more success, look back to where your success is. Talk about that. If I know I'm going to a meeting and I get a chance to talk about what I'm proud of, I want to try to make sure that I get that, make that happening. Because sometimes, manufacturing is a repeatable process. No day is the same. Every day is a new day. It's a new opportunity to create new stories. And one of my least favorite saying is same old, same old. I'm like, no, right. No, it's not magic moments. And I like your other comment that you've said to me is just, being a stranger in your own business and just kind of seeing something different. Mark, this has flown by. So what do you want to leave our manufacturing people?
Oh, well, I've loved this. So I would love it if people go watch my TEDx, which should be out by the time this comes. So again, my name's Mark Levy, Marklevy. The name of my TEDx is tentatively, so it may not be called this by the time it's published, but it's called Your Secret is Obvious. And it's the idea behind the fact that whatever it is that we're doing, that our good work alone just won't be enough for our organization, that we need to create something that makes us stand out as an organization. And that can often be hard to see because of the curse of knowledge or the curse of expertise. We know our work too well. We're too expert in it. So we're blinded to what makes us great. So you almost need to become a stranger in your own work to see it more clearly, to find what that greatness or that point of differentiation is. And so I would love for you to find my TEDx talk, Mark Levy. And also my website is levyinnovation.com, Levy innovation.com.
I love it. And we're going to leave those links in the show notes so you can just grab those and click on those. There'll be an article on the website. And Mark, I learn from you with every interaction, man. You think different, and I love surrounding myself with people like you, and just helps us see something we don't see before. And you just reinforce like what we're doing with sharing our proud moments. I'm not going to forget that. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing with all our listeners today.
Trevor, I always love every conversation we have, and thank you. And thanks everyone for listening to me.
Hey folks, appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.